Breaking Barriers.
Want to welcome you to another episode of Breaking Barriers podcast. I'm Gary Bontrager, your host. I am excited tonight to interview what I would call a childhood hero. I've watched him through magazines, and I've watched you at every angle I could that was available to me back in the day. We would always listen. My oldest brother was 13 years older than me, and he could go to tractor pulls, and he would come home and tell us, about you winning. And so Danny Dean, welcome to the Breaking Barriers podcast.
Thanks, Gary.
Sitting here in your home, and I appreciate you opening the doors and letting us in. I know you got a lot going on, and fortunately harvest wrapped up for you.
Yeah, I got done a week ago, yeah.
So one of the things that where we want to start is, how'd you get started with tractor pulling? You were a farm kid, I take it.
Yeah, so I was a farm kid, and I was always intrigued when I plowed, the power it took and so forth. And along about the time I was 15 or 16, a close friend of mine was starting to pull, and I went with him, and I said, "This is for me. I got to do this."
And that's what got you started. And that was like a local farm pull?
Yeah, they were brush pull, what we call brush pulls.
Yep.
Now, of course, NTPA didn't form until 1970, and in fact, that early on in the late 60s, when I started pulling, I was in my late teens. I pulled against Ed Hart, the person who actually helped start NTPA. And
right.
So Ed and I had a little bit of a rapport. He had a D21 and I had an 806. And
yes, he was foundational in getting the NTPA started.
Yes.
Visited with him numerous times.
Uh-huh.
So from that point, you got hooked with it. So what'd you start pulling? When was your first, like at 16, 17, you started pulling a farm tractor?
Yeah, in 67, 68, I started pulling an 806.
Okay.
And I pulled all the county fairs about in Ohio. And
right.
I didn't hardly get out of Ohio except to go to like M&W World Pull. And
that 806 was stock or?
No, it wasn't quite stock. It probably at the time had 350, 400 horse. And I had nice set of 24 532s, and I did well. Well, just terrorizing the county fair circuit.
Right.
So, yeah.
And then from that, what was the next step?
I built a 460 for the 5,000 pound class, and at the same time, I was just my senior year in college, and that class just didn't work out for me, and I got hooked up. First, like I said, I knew Ed Hart, and he asked me to come work for the NTPA. And so for 2 years, I was a track judge, and they had a sled at the time, and I hauled it around, and I made a lot of contacts. I would say when I pulled in my late teens in the 60s and 70s there, I met Jack Walder, and Jack, of course, won, I don't know, at least one championship. I don't know how many more. But he had a red tractor. And so, I don't know, I was a kid, and then Jack kind of took a liking to me. So he told me, I told him, I says, "Hey, I just ordered a brand new 1066. I'm going to pull it." And he told me, he says, "I'm going to give you a guy's name and number, and you go see him." And that was Jerry Lagarde. And Jerry Lagarde was just starting his business. So I was one of his earliest customers, and we just kind of hit it off. I think at the time, International Harvester had 6 kits out. I can't name who all had those kits. Tommy Abrams, I think maybe John Steelman, I think Klug had a kit, and John Thompson had a kit.
And these were kits that International put together for the pullers. I just heard about that this morning, and I heard you're accurate on the 6. The two of you are aligning on your story.
Yeah, and like I said, I don't know who got the other 2 kits. John Deere did the same thing. They had about 6 factory kits, and then I think John Deere says, "Hey, we don't want to do this thing." That's what the same with NASCAR. GM and Ford, they're in and out, and they,
how much support they want to give.
Yes.
Yeah. So that happened about a year or two that International did those kits, maybe 1 year, right?
Yeah, I think like 1970 or right along in there was when they put those kits out.
Okay. Because that was, because Jerry Lagarde was obviously instrumental in designing the 400 series motor.
Yes, he was one of the 4 engineers that
Right.
designed that motor and built that motor.
And so it was after that kit came out then that he kind of went out and started Hypermax.
Right, he was still working for Harvester at the time.
Okay.
And I can't really remember for sure date-wise. I think maybe mid-'80s he quit Harvester and just dwelled on his business of Hypermax Engineering. Of course, I actually know how the name came up for Hypermax, but I mean, he and I were pretty close. I don't know why we hit it off so well, but we did. And at that time, I generally got the chance at the first new Power, and I'd win on the weekend, and everybody'd call him on Monday and say, "Hey, I want what Danny's got," you know.
Right.
So I give him all the credit. If it wasn't for him, I wouldn't be here talking to you today. But you know, just all the stars aligned for me.
Right. Well, I knew you were an NTPA official, and that got you around the right crowd. And life is really all about connections.
That's right.
And so, and from what I've heard before, you were one of the original, I think, 5 or so that Jerry Lagarde then kind of started to work with out of Hypermax.
As far as I know, Jack Walter had been to Jerry's shop because he had one of the kits.
Okay.
He had been to, it was really an old dairy barn in the backyard because this was a farm setup. Anyway, Jack had been there, I knew. And Jack's the one told me to go see Jerry.
Okay.
And when I got there, it was December of 1973. It was the 23rd of December. I still remember it. There was another red tractor in the barn, and I had to come home and do a little research, but that was John Thompson's tractor. So as far as I know, my tractor was the second tractor to ever be in that barn. And John was a better farmer than I was, so he would get his farm work done, and then it was usually 1st of July before he got started. Me, as soon as the pulling would start in the summer, I was off pulling. But John took me under his wing. He was like my dad at the time. I mean, he was my mentor, and he taught me so much about reading tracks. I thought I knew a lot, and I knew enough, but between him and I would Ralph Banner was the other one.
Okay.
Him and I would always compare notes at pulls. Of course, it was more fun then for me to hang with the modified guys. I was more friendly and close to those people because I had friends in my class that I was friends with, but they're still competitors.
Right.
And, you know, you just don't be too friendly with all your competitors. But I did have a few from time to time. Of course, I pulled long enough that there was a lot of turnover. I mean, you know, you pull 20 years and you're going to see a lot of those 3 and 4 year guys pass and new people come up.
So how old were you? Were out of college till you got the 1066, and you had started to farm.
Yeah.
And so you bought the 1066.
Yeah.
To farm.
Yeah. Yeah.
And how much farming did you do with it?
I ran at 20 hours. It so happened we ordered 2 of them. I ordered one, Dad ordered one, and we had the 806 still. And I just said, "Hey, Dad, I'm going to make mine a pulling tractor. I don't know how much farming it's going to do." Of course, when I pulled the 806, I pulled it and farmed with it too, but I could see that was going out the window pretty quick, that wasn't going to work anymore.
So you stripped it down, pulled hydraulics off of it at that point?
And, most of them, yeah. Yeah, hitch and fenders and all that stuff. Yeah.
Went away and interesting. I know, well, you were talking about Thompson. He pulled for quite a number of years and was competitive as well.
Yes.
There's in the beginning, were you guys always taking your tractors into Jerry's to have him work on them at Hypermax?
Jerry put my tractor together the first time. I took it up there, brand new tractor basically, and he took it apart and he put it back together. And I went up to pick it up and he told me about, this and that. And he tried to explain to me, well, here's another sidebar for you. We sat in his kitchen when I took it up there and he said to me, I've got this new pump. He said, I'd like for somebody to try it. And I said, I'm in. And it happened to be a Sigma pump. And for the longest time, I was the only one that had a Sigma pump.
Because that was a game changer.
And then finally, John Thompson put one on and Dickie Sullivan put one on. And then it didn't take too long until a lot of the other people. But yes, I never had a P pump. I always had a Sigma pump.
Oh, really?
But anyway, when I went to pick up the tractor, he was trying to teach me how to flow time it. And flow timing a Sigma pump is, oh my God, it's almost impossible. He said him and his wife almost had a divorce over it because she was trying to help him flow time this thing. So then that's when he started marking the pumps, whereas all you had to do was lock it down on a scribe mark on the hub, on the gear hub, and there was a little pointer, and you timed the pump when you took it off, and you could move it, but you just lock it down and put it on and put your gear on, and you were good to go.
Good to go and put it back in.
So, but yeah, that was one of the things he tried to show me when I picked up tractor. Well, and I've told you, I didn't have any money at the time, and I figured out real quick I had to do my own mechanic work because I couldn't afford anybody else, and nobody else cares like you do. It's your money, and so you care about how it's put together, where somebody's getting paid to put it together. They don't have a dog in the fight.
Right.
So I did all my own mechanic work. Now, Jerry did all the engineering. I would call him up and make suggestions. I need this, I need that. I said, I'm a farmer. I'm not an engineer. You build it, I'll put it together.
Okay.
So that's kind of the way that went.
So
I knew I wasn't smart enough, but I was smart enough to tell him, we need a girdle. We need more air. We need a different turbo. Or my pump's doing this, fix it,
So he had he put a dyno in at some point.
Mm-hmm.
And from what I've heard, it was in the milk house.
Yeah, it was in the cooling room. He had a silo on one side of the barn, cooling room on the other side, and he ran a fire hose across to get water out of the silo that he had a pool liner in to cool the water break dyno. And the dyno had the dyno room had 3/4 inch bulletproof bank vault doors on it to keep the shrapnel in the dyno room, and the controls were outside. Yeah, it's a pretty cool setup. Yeah.
But you don't recall what you guys were getting for numbers back then with like 2 and 3 turbos and 4?
I never really asked. I didn't want to know. All I wanted to know was I had enough power to get the job done. And I would say to him, hey, I need more power. But we never did. And he was kind of secretive about that stuff. I'd ask him how many cc's my pump was putting out, and he never would really tell me about that, yeah.
Huh, interesting. So, yeah, that's, you had mentioned the name Hypermax. I've never heard the story where that name came from.
Okay.
Why don't you share that?
I was, of course, Jerry and Linda, his wife, were a young couple, and I don't think Max was born yet, or he just was. Anyway, they had a young son, Max, and Max was a very smart kid, just like Jerry. Jerry was very smart. But anyway, he just knew things that kids, he was very intuitive about things in the world, and he was also very, because he was so smart, he was pretty hyper. He was a hyper kid. So that's where his name was Max. So Hypermax is where the name came from.
I would have never guessed. I'd have never guessed that.
Well, ask me where the name Rooster comes from.
Well, where's that come from?
Oh, that's Jerry. He's the one that named me the Rooster. And I mean, even the Polars call me Rooster. All the farmers around here still call me Rooster.
Okay.
But
so
what
that
happened?
was your nickname.
What?
That was your nickname.
That was
and you
my
just
nickname.
Put it over on the tractor.
And I put it on the tractor. But what happened?
Were you a hothead?
What?
Were you a hothead?
Well, here's the story. Another friend of mine, Mike Mason, we took his tractor up there to be built. And I took Mike up there and introduced him to Jerry, and they worked out a deal. And so then when we took Mike's tractor up to Jerry for him to build, it was 666. We took him to fighting cocks, a male and a female. And anyway, he turned these fighting cocks loose in his yard. And actually, I think they're small. They're like banny roosters.
Right.
But anyway, Jerry and I got in a little spitting match one time working on Mike's tractor. It burned a piston. We were working on it. And I wanted to do things my way, and he wanted to do things his way. And anyway, he says, "You're just like that little rooster." He says, you're always wanting to pick a fight. And anyway, he started calling me Rooster. So then after Farm Fest 76, I had a little really small sponsorship for that pole, and I had side shields. Then once Farm Fest 76 was over, I needed a name for my tractor. So I says, got to be the Rooster, you know? So
and it just stuck.
Named the tractor Rooster, and then all the Polars started calling me Rooster, you know? So that's
just stuck.
So Hypermax was the one that named me. So
okay.
Anyway.
Interesting. When you guys built that 1066 in the beginning, you guys were running a 414.
Yes,
Is that what you stayed with, or did you eventually?
Yes, a lot of people don't know that, but I ran the smallest motor in my class, unless it was a John Deere 407, but most John Deeres were bigger than that. I had the smallest and the shortest stroke motor in the class. Always. I always ran a 414.
You're just trying to get more RPM, or what was your reason?
I guess I just wanted to be different. I wanted to be difficult, I guess.
Right.
Because all Jerry's dyno work was on a 436.
Right.
1/4 inch longer stroke. And he says, well, I worked on the cams and stuff like that, and turbos. He says, well, I worked on a dyno on a 436 that might work on your tractor. I said, give it to me, you know. And we did have to tweak some turbos and some timing and stuff like that, but I figured out pretty quick what it took to make it work. But I just like the RPMs. I mean, in the summer of 1979, I drove John Thompson's tractor in the 9,000 pound class. It was a 436, and mine was a 414, and they were different, but they both performed pretty close the same. But I always liked the RPM that my motor would turn compared to everybody else.
So you were able to get a little more out of it.
Yeah, probably 250 or so more RPM.
Okay.
You know.
So when you built that 1066, the very first kit was a Hypermax. You never had one of the international twin turbo kits.
When mine came out, it was a TO4 on the bottom and a 18A 74 on the top. But then shortly after that, we went to a TO8 on the bottom because the TO4 wouldn't stay with us. Okay. But all the John Deere guys were still running a TO4 on the bottom.
Just worked with their configuration.
It worked with their setup.
And that's interesting because when I talk to guys like you, the numbers you're throwing out for turbos don't make any sense to what we're doing today.
that's the thing. I'm kind of lost on the new turbos too, because I ran into that with my Cummins pickup. You know, they've got different wheels and different numbers, right. But now all the wheels they're manufactured in-house.
Right. Right.
You know, like Weimer and Hypermax, they make their own wheels. I mean, they machine them out. And
yeah. So were you getting turbos and everything from Hypermax?
Yes.
So you bought
always, yes.
And when he sold it, and I'm curious because I I know they make manifolds and pieces like that, but they didn't necessarily make all the plumbing. It wasn't just like a bolt-on kit.
Oh yeah,
It was.
When I went from everything was bolt on and it fit. I would get it and it would fit.
So he would machine or get it casted.
Yeah, whatever it took. He just sent it to me and I bolted it together.
Okay.
When I went to Three Chargers, I took the tractor up there and we worked all night. It was like 2 nights before the pull I was going to. We worked all night putting that thing together. Late. I can still remember it. I was tired. But we put that thing on there and then it was winter time. We went winter pulling.
Oh, okay.
So I think I went to Harrisburg, PA, pulled there, and one of us had left the nozzle loose and it went into the little Chargers. So I didn't do any good there. And Jerry said, "You've got to go to Denver," because Denver was next pull before Indy. And I'm like, I don't want to go to Denver. He says, "You got to go there." And I went to Denver and it run fine, and then went to Indy and tore it up. And first class, came home, put it together, went to Atlanta. No, went to Eustis, Florida, tore it up. Had to drive all the way back home, put it together, and from then on it,
What'd you change to get it to reliability?
Well, there were little things. Like I said, the turbo was the deal the first time. When it blew up at Indy, I blew a freeze plug out of the head and water in the pans, so I was done for that show.
But it wasn't major.
No, nothing major. Well, I had to buy a new head, but at that time, it was all relative. What things cost then as compared to now. It's probably worse now, but anyway, and I went to Florida and the water valve malfunctioned. Well, we did away with that water valve as soon as that happened. Jerry said, "I thought that might happen." I said, "Well, thanks a lot." After I melt all my pistons. Right. But anyway, just little bumps in the road whenever you come out with a new setup. But I mean.
So you talked about your water valve. What kind of system were you using at that time? It wasn't a Simpson, was it?
No. And I got to give Max credit. I mean, his water valve was one of the best things I've ever seen. Now, I never had one.
Okay.
My brother had one, and of course, Al Cook and I were real tight. Of course, he pulled D21. He had one, and John Lancaster, all the AC guys. Of course, right. Max was always an AC guy. So, but that's one of the best. But what the valve I was talking about that malfunctioned, it was mechanical. I mean, it all came on with the throttle. When I got to a certain throttle position,
it would trip.
It would pull the water valve on, and there was a design flaw in that water valve that that's another story.
So after that, though, you changed that up.
We changed to a diaphragm valve that the boost turned it on.
Okay,
and then that was the same valve that. They're still using that valve today on hyper setups.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Same valve.
I've got one of Max Simpson's valves on
That's
mine.
a good valve.
And it works like a top.
Yeah, don't leave that. No, that's a good valve.
Clean all the water jets out and things like that all the time.
What gets me is you see four-wheel drive, diesel four-wheel drive pickups. They've got that valve on.
Yeah, they do.
He sold a bunch of those.
He did. It's one of the more popular
Max
ones.
and I were pretty friendly, pretty tight.
Right.
But
and of course the ACs, that's changed a lot. They had trouble with the blocks being strong enough at some point. A lot of them run Cummins.
Right.
I made the mistake of telling somebody on here that they all run Cummins, and I've had a few true AC guys call me up and reprimand me.
Yeah.
The diehards, they'll call you out.
Yeah.
And I know some of them were on switches even back then. Like they'd get going and they'd have to flip the switch or something on the water. And so there was a lot of methods back then.
Of course, Dave Stengel was alcohol, and he had a switch, enriching switch that he had to hit. And yeah.
So you were running water in the head and the block. Yeah. Did you do that the whole time?
Yeah.
You always ran water.
Yeah.
The heads.
In fact, they still do it. I mean, Travis Slawback and Lock and Load, those guys, they're all still running wet blocks and heads.
Okay.
Heads too.
Oh,
yeah.
the heads are too?
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't really hold me to that. I'm pretty sure I asked this summer, and most of the Hypermax tractors are still running water in the head.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that could be. I have no
Yeah.
idea. I know we're completely dry on ours,
yeah.
but we're not doing what they're doing either.
Yeah. Yeah.
You ran a 414 your entire career then.
Yeah.
And
I did run a 436 for about 10 pulls, but
just didn't like the feel of it.
I ruined the crank.
Oh.
We made a little misstep and put chrome sleeves in the tractor and chrome rings do not like chrome sleeves, and all that crap in the bottom
ate it up.
Ruined my crank.
Okay.
So yeah.
A lot of times, and there's still a few I think that are running internal pumps. But did you always run an internal, or did you have an external pump by the end of the?
What do you mean by?
The oil pump on the motor.
Oh yeah. I ran a gyrotor pump. I think when I sold the tractor, it still had a gyrotor pump on it. But after that, when I started working with Kevin Comross, we went to an external pump.
Okay. And then ran it like that.
Yeah.
And then your water injection was just what? Keep it cooled down and get the extra juice out of it.
Yeah.
And that was a hyper system too.
Yes.
And if I understood right, he was selling the water to put in it at the time.
He sold a lubricant.
Okay.
We were running, a lot of guys ran distilled water. I just go to the tap and I was running so much that I
didn't care.
I said, heck, I'm not going to buy this distilled stuff. But he was selling a lubricant that was pretty good. And he still, I'm pretty sure he still sells a lubricant that's pretty good.
That could be.
But the AC, I mean, like I said, I was pretty tight with John Lancaster and Al Cook, and they ran some kind of a lubricant. It would turn the water kind of milky, like machining machine lubricant,
And what I'm running is a VP. It looks like antifreeze till you stir it, and then it gets milky like that.
Uh-huh.
And
now ours usually wasn't milky. I think
it'll get
turned
gunky
kind of
too.
blue.
Yeah.
What Jerry was selling.
Okay.
I don't know what I don't know now.
I've just been told guys would add alcohol sometimes to the water, and things get a little crazy.
I always asked Jerry about that, and he said, "Don't do that." And I'd ask him again about it. He says, "Just try it sometime." I did it at one pull and ruined my motor, so I never did it again.
Right.
But the AC guys could get away with that.
Really?
I couldn't make it work on Hypermax.
Because Kenny Sanders tried that on his, and he said he made it to about 150 feet till he melted the pistons down.
Well, I think I won the first class, and the second class, it was starting to show. It was down on power, and by the third class, it just locked the motor up.
You were done. You ran the same 1066 your entire 20 years.
Uh-huh. Yes.
And sheet metal, were you running metal sheet metal? Were you going?
I ran metal until year before I dropped down to the 7 class, 7500, whatever it was at the time. I put aluminum sheet metal on the year before that, and then I really dug into it that winter and got it down to the 7.
Oh, okay.
So yeah.
And you did pull 7 then some.
Yeah. My last couple 3 years, I'm not real sure, but
okay. Interesting.
I never thought I'd be any good in the 7, but I was really pretty dominant in the 7. I can tell you some stories about that too. But
well, go ahead.
The first time it ever won in the 7, my fastest gear was road gear. I hadn't done the transmission yet that changed ring and pinion. I sent it out east with a buddy of mine, which I never did, and Brett Berg drove it and won with it. That was the first win in the 7 with my tractor. Then the other incident was at Bowling Green. We weighed in, and the scales was weighing us light, and I only had 500 pounds on the front. And Rob Russell and I were really tight at the time, and he walked up to me and looked at my tractor, and he says, "Man, you're in trouble today." And I just kind of lowered my head and I gritted my teeth and I says, "You watch this, buddy." And I ended up, I should have won the class. Brett Berg and I got in a pull-off. And I had the class 1, and Brett burned a piston and pulled his motor down, and he just went by me a few feet.
Oh, no.
But, I mean, I was like, Rob just kind of pissed me off, and I'm like, I'm going to win this sucker.
They're going to show him.
you, But anyway.
That's
But
funny.
those are the 2 7 classes that I kind of remember.
When you built the aluminum sheet metal, did you build that yourself? Did you have somebody fabricate it?
No, there was a guy up north around Attica. I cannot remember his name right now, but he did the fenders and the hoods. Now, I was one of the few people that knew about him. So a lot of people would come to me and say, "Hey, I want sheet metal." And I'd just call him up and say, "Hey, turn me out some sheet metal." And I'd mark it up 20%, and here you are.
So they thought you were making it.
Yeah, they didn't know. Nobody knew. But anyway.
Did you worked on a lot of other pulling tractors in the through your career?
I worked on some, and most of them were friends. I know one time, the same year I was telling you about the 7 class, there was 3 international tractors in my shop. It was Tom Dickerson, Brett Berg, Rob Russell, and maybe Esden. And I changed oil in my tractor on the trailer. I never even got to unload, but those guys were all broke. And I'd kind of help them. John Klug rolled in here one time and I had to work on his tractor. I didn't want to, but I did. And it was just,
when you
he and I were always friendly and I didn't mind. He had the same thing I had, and
like he was your competitor.
Like I told you earlier, I drove his tractor and won with it several times,
right.
But it wasn't a matter of I didn't like him. I just didn't want to work on his tractor that day.
Right.
And it just
sometimes you're not in the mood. You don't.
But Billy wasn't with him, so I was next best. And I'm like, and the thing that really kind of upset me was he could have worked on it. He knew how to fix it. He just didn't want to. He didn't want to.
Yeah.
Because Billy was always the one that fixed it for him.
Right.
Billy Giberson.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, Billy was telling me a story about that once of you driving his tractor, and I guess it happened more than once.
Yeah.
And there were a couple others, I think, that worked on Klug's tractor over the years. I know, of course, he was a hyper guy.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
Dickie Sullivan and yourself.
Yeah.
You said
Yeah.
Thompson was.
Yeah.
Trying to think.
There was at least at one time probably 15 of us, but there, of course, Brett's dad, Bill Berg, he was pretty much all Hypermax.
Right.
Brett was kind of Hypermax, but Brett was kind of an engineer on his own. So
right, he was.
He did a lot of his own thing.
And then Billy Giberson ended up there and did a stint with those guys for a while.
Yes.
And so they
Billy's had a storied mechanic
career. He really has.
Yeah.
He really has. He ever help you out on anything?
Probably we just traded notes.
Right.
I don't ever remember him helping me wrench. He's one of the few people I would have let. But,
right.
But we would compare notes a lot.
I think when I was talking to Scott Buss, if you remember Dick Buss, and they had they had a couple different ones, Screaming Demon and Demon Be Gone, but Billy had built their hitch system too once they went to that adjustable.
Well, little be known, I forget where I first saw his hitch.
But it was an Engler hitch, basically.
Well, Billy was at Engler's, I think, when they came up with that hitch,
yes.
But the drawbar itself was an Engler drawbar.
Oh, really?
And that's one of the few. Tim and I were pretty good friends, but that was one of the few things. I didn't spend a lot of money with Tim. I didn't really need to, I guess, but that was one of the few things I bought from him was the drawbar itself.
Okay.
And then I saw Billy's version of the hitch, and I said, that's me, and I just built one.
Okay.
And then I built probably a dozen of those for other pullers.
Okay.
I'll give Billy credit for that hitch. That was and everybody still pretty much uses that today.
Right.
It's but it was
so
a lightweight.
He designed that style hitch then.
Pretty sure it was Billy.
Yeah.
I mean, he was at Engler's, but I'm pretty sure it was. the thing I liked about it was very light,
Right.
but the way it was built, it was very strong. You
Right.
know, it was braced in the right places.
Right.
And I just thought, you know, and I don't know that I ever told Billy that, but you know,
Interesting. Well,
it was. I just copied his hitch.
He
yeah.
wouldn't care, I'm sure.
Well, he would be proud of the fact.
Yeah, I'm
but
sure.
Anyway,
And
yeah.
then that was, did you guys, when you built that, did you have to have the second hook on it at that point yet? When did that
no,
happen?
Louisville. I mean, Louisville kind of instigated that whole deal, and then
Which was maybe because, and I don't know if that was there. Do you recall? I just seen a clip the other day where Klug was pulling and his hitch broke and he shot out through the tunnel and he missed everybody. Like, you know how people stand down at the end. He missed everybody, and I was wondering if it was around, I think that was like 83 or so.
yeah, but it wasn't one of Bill's hitches, and I think
No, it wasn't.
I can't even remember whether Klug. You'd have to ask Bill whether John's tractor ever had that particular hitch on it or not. But
okay.
there's several tractors that in my career that I saw their hitches break, but I don't really remember John's breaking. But if you say so, I will believe you.
There's a clip from it. And I'm not sure if it was at Louisville or like Indy Super Pole.
If it went out through
was.
the tunnel, it had to be Indy.
Okay,
that
then it was Indy.
That was the only winter pull that we pulled at where there wasn't something at the end of the track.
Yeah, then that was
it.
It
was a scary situation, really.
Because he shot completely out of sight, out of the tunnel.
Yeah.
That was pretty crazy. It just popped up in my news feed here recently. Somebody posted it. So. What other accidents did you see over the years?
Oh, I don't know. There was one. We were somewhere in the south, and somebody loading his tractor flopped it off the trailer on its side on top of himself, and he ended up being okay. I missed. Must have been Ricky Rose, him turning his tractor over at Toma. I was there. But I was back preparing Kevin's tractor to run. I was going to run it in the same class, and I missed that deal. Probably the best one was in the late 60s. I saw Tom Hollinger turn his tractor over on himself backwards at Louisville, and it was a 560 in the light class, and I was in the process of building a 460 in that class. And that always kind of stuck in my mind and intimidated me. But that was before wheelie bars.
Right.
But I saw that happen. Now, Tom Hollinger, they got the tractor off him and he was okay, but he was in bad shape for a little bit because the whole weight of the tractor steering wheel was on his chest. So,
wow.
Yeah.
Well, you've seen the beginning of no fenders, right?
Yeah.
And
I can't
if you would
have seen the way my tractor was, it's pretty scary.
So what do you have for a hitch or a seat on that tractor when you started on the Rooster?
I had a regular 1066 seat, one, and not the fancy one with high back, and it was not.
But it was mounted on the original.
Yeah, it was mounted on the original rear casting.
Okay.
The hydraulic casting and everything was still there, but I didn't have it braced very well. It seemed sturdy if you would hit it, but as I look back on it, it was pretty dangerous. And
okay.
I saw several guys get pitched off and land on their tire and get pitched out of the way. I never saw anybody get run over, but I saw them get pitched off because of no fenders, you know. Yeah.
And no seat belt.
Yeah, no seat belts.
And then did you guys, when you started, did you have a dead man throttle on it?
No. That was another thing. We didn't have a dead man throttle. No.
No
air shut off, no nothing.
Wow.
No, nothing. It was like a farm tractor.
You are the Iron Man. You guys had some brass balls back in those days.
We didn't know any better.
Right.
I mean, we were just, most everybody was farmers and nobody knew any better.
Right.
I mean,
and then as accidents occurred, they started developing all
rules.
this.
Yeah.
By the time you sold out and retired, and I know you stayed involved another, I think you said 16 years.
Yeah.
But by the time you sold your tractor, were wheelie bars on it?
Oh, yeah.
And you had fenders back on it?
Oh, yeah.
And then no roll cage, though?
The only thing, there's no roll cages. That didn't come up until, I don't know, some early 2000s maybe, or right at the end of 99 or something like that. But I always advocated for roll cages, but it never materialized. Of course, I wasn't going to put on any safety equipment that wasn't required. So,
right. You just recommended it.
But I always said we needed them, you know. But
I've heard your name come up on a couple different rules. One, I'm going to ask you about. There was, and what your reason was, and I don't know if it's even true, but you had lobbied to where people could only compete in 2 classes. Is that right?
No, that was never me.
That was not you.
No,
okay.
that was never
somebody
me.
threw your name on that. They couldn't compete in 3 classes anymore, which surprised me because you just said you were down in the 7,000.
Yeah, I always thought though. I always did, and this might maybe somebody heard me say it, but I always thought that you should just be in 2 classes. I thought with my tractor especially, it was a heavier tractor. It should be in the 9,000 pound class and the 12,000 pound class. But I wasn't interested in getting into 7. But then I was trying to make money, and so I dropped down to the 7, and then shortly after that they dropped the 11, which was the big class then. So I still only had 2 classes, a 7 and a 9. But the 9 was always no matter what we were pulling, the heavy class was always my favorite.
Okay.
Because you got a better sense of hooking.
Okay.
You know, when the
you
tractor
can feel
hooked.
the tractor set in the dirt.
The 7 is real hard to get. And the 85, I pulled that a little bit. And it's hard even in that class. Of course, there's so much more power in the tractors now than when I was pulling. So a lot of times they don't get a chance to hook.
Right.
You know?
No, they're buzzing pretty hard down the track the whole way. I want to ask you a little bit about tires. When you first started, what did you put on the Rooster the very first year? The very first, of course, I pulled in 74 and I had a lot of growing pains. You know, Was that the first year with the Rooster? That was the first year with the Rooster, but it wasn't a Rooster then, but that was the first year with my 1066. I struggled, really struggled. I had clutch issues. We didn't have a good enough clutch. Finally got a good enough clutch. Then I didn't realize it, but I had a pump problem, and I didn't realize it until that winter. But there's just something amiss about the tractor. But anyway, John Thompson took me under his wing the end of that summer and kind of got me on track too. Then in 75, I came out and won my first championship. Just right out of the box, I was doing well. I would win most of the 9s and be second in the 12, and Dave Stengel was winning the 12, and he would be second in the 9. It just, we'd swap. But my big thing, my tires then were just ag tires, just a set of 30.5s I picked up, and I cut them myself. Won a championship on them. But I could see the handwriting on the wall. There was Canadian hard tires out there, 30.5, 32s. I've heard those come up before. And I needed them. You know, Stengel had them, and that's why I couldn't beat him in the 12, because he had better tires. He probably had more power too, but he had better tires. And I think John Thompson had a set of Canadian tires. John Klug had a set of them. I'm like, I talked to Ralph Banner, and I says, hey, I need a set of Canadian hard tires. He said, I'll get you a set. And I bought them from Fouts Tire out in Kokomo, Indiana. Ralph arranged the deal. I went out and picked them up. I cut them myself, and I won every championship that I won on those tires. Really? And I took them off. I was leading the points the last year I owned a tractor in 1990. I was leading the points in one class to the other. And I realized I was starting to get beat by the double cuts, and I put a set of double cuts on, and I was like, oh my God, I was like a fish out of water. I never did really get them figured out before I sold the tractor. Okay. But they just weren't for me. Right. You know? Right. But I was wondering about that because, today, obviously, the manufacturing, pulling tires. Oh, yeah. A lot of these guys have 2 and 3 sets of tires. They try them and they don't work. And they're up to, I think they're up to, some of these are up to 60 lugs. You know? We still have 248, but, of course, 24 is what's standard typically on a most tractors.
Yeah. I had deep lugs on my tires too, and I really piled a lot of dirt in front of the sled. I mean,
oh, really?
I
So
really
you did run deep lugs quite a bit.
Oh yeah, I probably ran the deepest lugs of anybody, and you couldn't, as a competitor, you couldn't pull behind me in the same track. I mean, that was one of my advantages because I could tear up a track like nobody else, you know.
So if you went early, you could screw it up
Yes.
for the rest of them
Yes.
pretty well.
Yes.
Because a lot of them I know then didn't want a deep lug because it was piling so much dirt in front of the sled,
Yeah.
and they had to drag all that dirt
Yeah.
with them.
You know, I still think about that. You know, you drag, but sometimes I have so much dirt I couldn't hardly get backed up to get unhooked. You know, it was we drug a lot of dirt,
Right.
But, you know, I was lucky in the fact that I was in the top 2 or 3% power wise in my class. I mean, almost everybody else with a red tractor had the same deal,
Right.
And you know, there was, of course, Dave Stengel had, you know, he had sufficient power to
Right.
get the job done, and of course John Lancaster with his AC, he was
Competitive.
pretty bad.
Right.
Yeah.
Breaking Barriers podcast is funded by Gary Bontrager Consulting. Gary Bontrager Consulting does a lot with systems and processes to facilitate growth in your company. We also work a lot with conflict mediation, perpetuation planning from one generation to the next or one business owner to the next. If you want more information on that, you can look us up on Facebook and also out on our website at www.garybontrager.com. We want to thank Bob Parks with Custom Tire Cutting and the Parks Pullers for supporting the Breaking Barriers podcast. Their product speaks for itself. It has helped us get many wins, as well as many other pullers out there. Check them out and try their product. You will not be disappointed. Thanks again for your support at Breaking Barriers podcast. What you mentioned bringing that you did a lot of the work yourself because you couldn't afford it.
Right.
But before we got on here, you actually told me you made money tractor pulling, and I just want to talk about that a little because I think you're the first person I have met, and there's probably others out there that did it similar to you, but you actually could earn enough money that you made money pulling tractors.
Yeah. At that time, I think starting in '75, the first year I won my championship, from all that time through at least the '70s, I was pulling down 35 to 40,000 clear money after all my expenses, road expenses, travel gas, entry fees, everything, tractor expenses. And that's pretty good money in the mid '70s.
That's real good money.
So it was my hobby, but it was a job too.
Right.
And I realized, you know, that. But even then, you know, I was farming, and farming wasn't that good, especially in the '80s. I mean, a lot of people went down, but pulling supplemented my income, and I tell everybody I didn't have any money. I really didn't, and I had to win to keep going. You know, it just.
Well, I work with people a lot in my other job and with consulting and things, and everybody needs a reason why.
Yeah.
And, you know, it sounds like you had one. You weren't about to lose money at this game because if you were, it was going to stop.
I couldn't have done it if I didn't win,
So,
you know, as much as I did. I had to win.
And I think that's, so you paid attention to that, made sure you could do what you could make sense of the money you were spending to win. But you pulled a lot. There were a lot of indoor pulls as well. So
that's another thing. I would hook at least 75 times a year, maybe a little more than that. And I was one of the few pullers that just went. If there was a national pull, I was there. I mean, it didn't matter where it was, when it was. And of course, the more practice you get in, the better you get.
Right.
But luckily at that time, the equipment would stay together fairly well. I mean, I had breakdowns, but a lot of times I could place or win a pull and be broke. Spectators didn't even know it. You know, I knew it.
Right.
And a lot of the competitors didn't even know it. But, you know, I knew the tractor well enough that there was something wrong with it. You know, but the tractors they weren't as breakdownable, so to speak, as they are now.
Well, you had mentioned the rear end, so I want to talk about this a bit too. You were running a stock rear end with stock gearing.
Pretty much, yeah. Had trouble with the spiders, the cross and the spiders, and the carrier for those was cast. Ralph Banner built me a steel carrier and needle bearing
rear end,
needle bearing spider gears.
Right.
And we had a couple other issues in the rear end, but nothing real major. We got changing the ring and pinions, playing with them to go faster.
Okay.
Without changing the transmission gears. I had some special. We had, of course, your high gear was just a coupling; it was direct. But we had a couple of third gears. There was no first and second. It was like you had standard third and a fast third. And, you know, that was back when we weren't running like Larry Peterson's transmission.
Right.
But, yeah.
That's interesting. The transmission then, though, was still in the stock housing. And
we had issues with that, and Jerry came up with fixes for all that.
Okay.
Bottom shaft braking because it was hollow.
Right. Put a
solid shaft, and then a support bearing underneath. And then we got the tie in the top shaft and the bottom shaft together. And Jerry was making our fast third gear, and he was making good money on our transmissions too, not just motors. But
he seemed to have a knack for knowing how to make money as well.
He did.
He wasn't shy about that.
Yeah.
And then the torque, you just took it out?
Yeah, I was probably the last one to run a torque, and oh my gosh, that really worked well. But it, as far as to pull, it really worked well. You could run a lot of times. Well, I would run probably a gear too fast. You'd come out, and as soon as you throw the torque head, it would set the tires because it load the motor. Then on the other end, you'd start to run out of juice in the heavy class. And everybody said I was really good at knowing when to pull the torque back and still, you know, make everything work, not lose my traction. But I know the torque worked on oil going through the shaft. And we got to twisting the shaft right where those oil holes were.
Right.
And Jerry said, I'm at the end of, and I would guess, just guessing, that we were at the 1,200 horse range or something like that.
And you were still getting the torque to hold.
Yeah, maybe 1,000. We didn't, as you and I talked earlier, we weren't putting out the power that I always thought we were. And I knew that at the time, that they were over-guessing what our power really was. But I never asked Jerry, and he never really volunteered, so I didn't know how much horsepower I had. I just knew I had enough. And that was all that I cared about, was that I had enough, you know.
Well, that's interesting, because I've heard different numbers. If people listen to this, they'll hear people say it, you know, that you guys with the two turbos were around 12 to 13 and
I think that's
16 with
I think that's a pretty high estimate. It's probably 700 or 800 maybe.
Okay.
You know, I don't know. I always thought when I sold the tractor in 1990 that I had 2,200 horse, but I'm not even sure I had that much power then, you know.
And you never dynoed the tractor?
Oh, no. My stuff, I've never put anything I own on a dyno, even like my Harleys. Everybody wants to put them on a dyno.
Yes, they do.
I don't do that. I just...
Boy, how do you tune the thing if they put a...
You just tune it so it beats everybody else, and don't worry about it.
Well, that's the problem on mine. They had to digitally tune it, so they.
But I know that you know, Super Farms and all the single turbo classes, Pro Stocks, everybody wants to put their motor on the dyno, and I'm like, I let Jerry put his on the dyno, and that's why I paid a little extra.
Yeah.
You know, you tear up the parts and just sell me the good stuff.
I think that's one thing that I see different, and I guess I wonder what your thoughts are. Back in those days, Jerry was international Hypermax. I mean, Hypermax was on. If you wanted to win, you pretty much had to have.
They were dominant.
They had to have them.
Yeah.
And at some point, he did some stuff for the deer guys too. Is that right?
Yeah, later on when things started dying out, he'll work on anybody's pump and stuff now.
Right.
He'll sell you an injection pump,
Right.
work on anybody's stuff,
But then the AC guys, they never. I don't know that he did much with them.
no.
The difference is today, I would say there's a lot of motor guys scattered across the country.
Oh yeah.
And they're not sharing information. And I just know, like, mine's on the dyno more than once.
Uh-huh.
And we find gains.
Uh-huh.
You know, we're trying things and tuning it. And all of a sudden you get some here and some there. And if I didn't do that, we'd just be guessing. And some of those gains are not big enough that you could tell probably on the track. But when you start stacking 2 and 3 of them together, they make a difference.
Right. I always looked for, when I wanted power gain 50 or 100 horse, I wasn't shy about, I want big power, not 10 horsepower, that's
Right.
not enough. That's not enough to satisfy me. But I think, like you say, 3 10 horsepower gains get you 30 horse,
Right.
that's worthwhile.
Right.
I mean,
Makes it worth something.
but yeah, like I said, I let Jerry do all the dyno work and sell me the parts.
And I think that worked well in that era.
It did. But there's a lot of dynos out there now. And,
There are.
and there's a lot of, Jerry and I talk about it still. I talk to him once in a while, and we talk about how many people there are out there selling good parts. I mean,
Right.
not just junk. I mean,
Right. No,
when I was
there's,
pulling, there were several people selling things that just weren't as reliable, probably.
Right.
But
Right.
Jerry's stuff was always reliable, and that was his big game was, I'm not going to send you out there with something
Right.
that's going to break and make me look bad.
Right. Well,
He always wanted it to work, and so he always wanted to test it on dyno first.
right. No.
But the big thing was, just because it works on dyno, it doesn't always work on the track.
Exactly. It's going to stress different.
But
Most
you
of the
know-
dynos aren't running
you
the
know
RPM
that.
we
Yeah.
do. But,
Yeah.
I run hyper valve train. I
Yeah.
mean, it's about as proven as anything
Yeah.
out there. And I guess now that I say that, people know it, but it doesn't really matter. I mean, they can all get, I don't think the valve train's going to make that big of a difference. So you guys didn't strip, though, all the hydraulics off of it until you went to the 7?
No, I still had power steering, up into the late 70s even, I still had power steering. But what we did, of course, we took the upper bolster out of it. That, like, my tractor was capable of it when I bought a narrow front end or wide front end. And
So you had that set up, which was kind of rare on a 1066.
but I've still got one of those tractors that will do either. And then right now it's got a wide front on it, but I still have the narrow front for it.
Oh, do you really?
A farm tractor.
It's the one your dad had?
Yes.
Don't
But-
ever sell that one
Well,
unless you sell it to me.
Probably won't. But we took all the upper bolster out because it was so heavy. So we retained the hydraulics, and I just run 2 lines up, and I had a cylinder off of a L Gleaner combine.
Oh, really?
That I used, and just have a solid tie rod across the front, and just steered it with that cylinder. Yeah.
Interesting. And then as far as the seat, that eventually all come off and get rebuilt?
Yeah. I mean, everything. When the fender, I think maybe it might have been the year before the fender rule. I think I put the stock fenders back on. Of course, I was 9 and 12. I had weight to play with, kind of like the heavy pro stocks. I mean, they've got weight to play with. I had the stock fenders on. Well, then when I decided I was going to lighten up to 7, those went by the wayside. And we put aluminum, kind of a neat little aluminum setup on it.
And changed all that.
Yeah, yes, sir.
And today, like mine are fiberglass.
Yeah.
A lot of guys run fiberglass and aluminum.
Yeah.
You were very competitive, and you said you were because you had to win. But I'm just going to guess, in your family, maybe your family was a competitive family? Not really.
Nope.
So you didn't play sports? You didn't get aggression from...
I sucked at sports in high school. I hated it too. But now, all my buddies that were good at football, baseball, they're having joint problems.
Right.
I have none.
Right.
I'm still in good shape, but my hand-eye coordination just wasn't that good in high school.
Okay. What led you to selling the Rooster?
It got to be a point where I told you I was always making money, and the last year that I campaigned the tractor, I did well that year, and still ended up $1,000 in the hole, which that's not bad,
No,
but
not bad.
I could see the handwriting on the wall, and things were just starting to change. That I was going to have to make a lot of changes. When I finally told Kevin Comross that it was time for him to get rid of his tractor, the tractor sat for about 5 years, and the reason it sat,
Kevin's tractor did.
Kevin's.
Yeah.
After I sold it, we needed a new set of tires. We needed a frame. You know, we were
And
still
this
all
was
cast.
your tractor originally?
My tractor.
You sold it to Kevin.
No, I sold it to Coleman Wheatley.
Okay.
And he sold it to Kevin.
Okay.
But anyway, it needed a data acquisition system. I never had any of that stuff, but I could kind of see the handwriting on the wall that I needed a data acquisition system. I needed a computer. That was at that time, and I just plain and simple wasn't going to spend the money anymore. It was just I was going to spend money I didn't have, and
had your fun.
So yeah, I mean, my time was up. You know, I just.
So for telemetry, what were you using? You had a TAC?
Yeah, TAC, but I never paid any attention to it. I mean, I didn't pay attention to anything when I drove, but I had gauges and I had lights and stuff, but I'd burn the tractor down rather than get out of it, you know. So
when you said you had about 250 more RPM than the 436s, you're
roughly.
You know what RPM you would pull? You didn't
Not
even
for
know.
sure.
You don't even.
I think that I could come out of the hole at 5,000 or 5,500, pretty high, but then it dropped down to about 4,000 or so when the load hit it. But I always.
I didn't know. I mean, because today we watch the TAC a lot, and we know when it hits a certain point, that's when you start to work the clutch.
Bill Nolan, who drove for Ralph Banner.
Okay.
I drove Ralph's tractor a couple times, but this was after I drove his best tractor, Banner Brown, at the time. I let Bill Nolan drive my tractor a couple times, and first time he pulled it, he won on it. I can still remember it was at Purdue University. But I told him, just bring it up to about 4,000 and bring it out. You know, just start letting the clutch out. And after he got done, I noticed when he took off, he hesitated just a little. The tractor hesitated just a little bit. And after he got done and we were talking, he says, that 4,000 RPM you told me, that was just kind of a guideline, a starting point, right? And I says, yeah, you're probably right, because it probably needed to be up higher than that.
Right.
But
so it was just low enough that it maybe barely got him out.
It did. I think he kind of pushed clutch back down and got a little more RPM and then took off. But you know, somebody that's never driven a diesel where you have to get the turbos up, you know, doesn't know. But he is a good driver and he figured it out pretty quick.
By the time you sold the tractor, were you at 3 or 4 turbos?
I was at 4.
Okay.
I was at 4. Mid 80s, I got the 4 Charger set up. Okay. So.
And today, I think some of them are going back to 3. They figured out.
Well, Kevin's tractor was 2 Chargers.
Okay.
And when I had on a red tractor, I had the first 3 Chargers set up.
Okay.
I got it first. And we pulled in the winter circuit in Florida, and I won almost everything down there. And Dickie Sullivan and John D., they came down to Florida and they had to set up on, but I was still a little bit dominant. But that spring at the NTPA meeting, they darn near outlawed 3 pressure stages. And I was on the board at that time, and I'm like, shit, you know, what do I say? I didn't say a word because I knew who had done all the winning, and I knew who they were talking about. But the only saving grace was the reason I had 3 stage was the AC guys started that at the end of the summer. And I still 2-stage, and they were starting to beat me. And I told Jerry, I says, we've got to do something. But they were all 4-chargers, and Jerry came out with this 3-charger setup that was so dominant. It was like 150, 200 horse gain, and that was just unthought of at that time. And I go, oh shoot, I'm going to get outlawed here, and I haven't even really got a good start with this deal. But they said because the ACs, they let it ride, but that's when they limited three pressure stages. Was that? But then the thing that got me was when I started helping Kevin, we put it was a 3-charger 2-stage setup.
Right.
And 2 stages would still get the job done, It would still win.
Right.
And I think now there's the alcohol tractors still just run 2 stages, 3 chargers.
Right.
But most of the good tractors in the Superstock class run 4 chargers again. I mean, they tried 3 chargers, 2 stages, but now they're back to 3 stages.
Yeah.
Because I told you earlier on, I hardly go to one pull a year, but this summer I did 5 of them toward the end of the summer, and I started asking a lot of questions again,
what they're doing.
What are you running and so on, and people are pretty open with me.
Yeah.
I mean,
what was the payout on a lot of those purses back then?
not very much. 1,000, 1,500, about the same as what they are now, or even a little more maybe. I don't know.
They're more, I would say, on the average.
You mean now?
No, you got paid more.
I think that talking to everybody.
Yeah. I've never won over 500 for winning first.
Maybe
I know some of them out there.
Louisville and Indy, 2,500 or so.
Well, right, the big ones will pay out bigger.
But at Bowling Green, I think at the time was a couple thousand to win. But
well, I think
the way I understand it, it was more money then than it is now.
Because Brian Connor was talking about that. I think Bowling Green, if you would have went in and won all 3 classes, if I'm right, he was talking about you could have walked out of there with $12,000.
Probably.
Yeah, I mean, they had some special event.
Probably.
And, so I'm like, and I know the Simon brothers, RJ Simon's putting on a big money pool. And it's amazing. I mean, they're filling them classes up pretty quickly. And, but, it costs a lot to get in too.
Yeah.
But
I think what's $10,000 to enter or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah, it was a pretty good number. I don't remember what it was, but it was
like playing poker.
Yeah, you're coming in and doing that. So if you would do it all over, what's one thing you'd do different?
I don't think I'd hardly change a thing.
Really?
Of course, along the way, I made some mistakes mechanically that I would clean up, but
nothing that you look back on and
no, not really.
One thing that's different, you went through a couple lower level tractors, but once you got started with the Rooster, you stuck with it.
Yeah.
A lot of people would change in the middle of that, and sometimes I hear regrets in that.
Yeah.
Do you have any idea how many first place trophies or how many first place positions you won in your career?
Not really. I'll give you, for instance, one summer I hooked 75 times and won, I think 73 times, I don't know, but won 43 or 45 of them. So when you are, and there's other summers where I won a lot. That was probably the most, but
you won
a lot of them are below.
43?
43. I won 43 out of 75 hooks. So.
That's pretty darn good.
Yeah.
Record.
Yeah. But that, so you forget a lot of them. There are certain pulls, though, that I can remember just because something happened, that stuck in my mind,
But you'd win, and it was like, okay, we go home and do it again tomorrow.
Yeah. But like I told you earlier on when we were talking, when I went to a pull, I knew I was capable, and I felt a little bit cocky about it, but I never knew for sure. And after I would win, I go, damn, I won,
Right.
I actually surprised myself, although I knew I was capable. I knew I had the equipment. I knew I had the ability, but, it just, you just never know. And so
You were never overconfident then.
I don't know about whether I'd say that or not, but I was obnoxious sometimes, But yeah.
I don't recall that. I always heard you as being a gentleman.
There's some, well, if you were a spectator, I was, because I knew who paid the bills.
Right.
And I was always really nice to the spectators. I was always really nice to the people. You know, how do you be kind about the people that weren't capable of winning?
Right. Because there are people out there that are filling the field and putting on a show.
Yeah, they're class fillers, and I don't want to call them class fillers because I've got to have somebody to beat.
Right.
To be good, I had to have somebody to beat.
And you got to have people to put on a show.
But there were other pullers in my class that treated those people like dirt.
Right.
And I had to even mention it a couple of times to a couple of people. Hey, you got to be nice to these guys. You know, I'm the only one you got out here to beat, and good luck with that, you know.
Right.
So, and the same in my class, though. There was about 3 people that was my day. That was my goal. I would set my sights on those people. One of them was John Klug. The other one was John Lancaster. And the third one was Brett Berg. And Brett Berg and I were tighter than anybody, but I still like beating the little guy.
Well, right. You want to still put it to him.
But, you know, it's those 3 people, if I could beat one or all of them, I had a good day.
Right.
And they were good enough competitors. If I beat them, I was pretty high up in the
Felt good
standings.
about yourself.
Yeah. I mean, you know, I won some money if I beat them. You
right. know? How many championships did you win in the course of that time?
I won 10 on my tractor and 1 on John Thompson's tractor.
Okay.
I cut a little deal with him that he was real good in heavy class and he was a little bit timid about the lighter class. And I said, hey, John, I'll win you a championship in that 9,000 pound class if you let me drive your tractor all summer. Of course, I had driven his tractor a little bit the summer before in that lighter class. And I pulled his tractor at Louisville in the 15,000. I pulled his tractor several times in the 12 too. He just liked to see it go down the track, but he was a good competitor and he knew what he was doing and he taught me a lot. But I took second place with my tractor a lot that one summer to win with his tractor.
Okay.
You know, I worked at it.
So you took second on purpose?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
I mean, I feel pretty confident.
He would have won it either way.
I could have won with my tractor. I feel pretty confident that if I hadn't been driving his tractor, it wouldn't have done as well. But his tractor was strong, and I mean, it was very capable. It just was a matter of the right person.
Get the right setup.
The right determination. Right. I was determined.
Right.
And I wasn't that I was so much any better than anybody else. I was just determined.
Yeah.
You know?
What, back in those days, what was the difference on the winning pull? Was it the first half the track, the last half the track? What did you focus on to try to make sure that you would win?
Of course, you had to find the right track and you had to have your tractor weighted right. And it seemed like I was always very fortunate. I was better if I didn't watch anybody as far as weighting my tractor. You know, I can tell you a couple instances about that, but
yeah.
Then my focus is on getting off the line.
Right.
I had a different style than everybody else. I would bury the throttle on the line. I mean, before I ever let the clutch out, my pump would be as wide open as it could be. It was turning as many RPMs as it could be. And I can remember one pull in particular. It was at Fort Recovery. And the pullers always stand, your competitors always stand at the starting line or the finish line.
Right.
And most of them were standing on the starting line and they were right here out of the corner of my eye about where my motor is. And I can remember burying the throttle on the line, and I'd always give it about a 2 count and take off. And I can remember just out of the corner of my eye looking over, and I had it wound up so tight they were starting to move back. And I'm thinking to myself, even though pulling is fast, you have a chance. It's like in slow motion. And I saw everybody move back, and I said, well, guess it's time to go. And I just let it go. But that's one of those pulls I can still remember, doing that.
Yeah.
And I won that pull. but I can remember doing that. I can
Do you
remember.
remember what your track speed was at that point? Were they recording that?
I know I don't. It's relative though. We were about as fast as what they are now. I think
Yeah.
maybe they're a little faster now, but
Well, one reason I asked, you brought up the timing thing.
it'd be 10 to 15 seconds.
Right,
probably.
that's the window.
Yeah.
And the thing that I find interesting is, people talk about they're in an accident or something where time just slows down. I feel that. Like, it's amazing how much of that
A lot of people don't realize, it seems like it happens real fast, but it's like in slow motion when you're on the tractor sometimes.
it really is. Like, if you got to work brakes or do some of those things,
Yeah.
of course, now we have a speed board, so
Yeah.
I love to watch that. I love to watch,
Yeah.
one of the last pulls I ran this year that you could see my head. I'm watching the speed board till I pass it because I knew how many feet first place was. And then I was like, I think I got him. But I'd gotten past the board. So it's just crazy how when that happens, it happens about that quick, but in your mind, it all slows down and it could be a minute.
Yeah.
It just plays out that
Yes.
way. I will agree with you. I think a lot of it happens on the first 100 feet.
It's all about getting kind of hooked.
It's
right,
where
take
most
off.
of it is. Certainly, though, if you're set up incorrectly, it'll bite you in the butt
Yeah.
at the other end.
Yeah.
I mean, if
Oh,
your
yeah.
if your
Oh, yeah.
weight's not right,
Oh, yeah.
you're going to pay a price.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
So, you've seen a lot of change with sleds. The early ones were probably ramped up. By the time in the 90s, they would have been flat, I would imagine.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I had my favorite sleds, and that's one thing about pulling. Your track is different every time you hook. I don't care if it's the same place from year in and year out, but those tracks will be a little different, but they're close to the same. But
Right.
different tracks, different sleds, and I pretty much had a hand. Like I said, I pulled a lot, so I had a handle on all the sleds, what they were going to do,
Right.
and how they functioned and how they made my tractor work.
Right.
There's some of them you could turn, some of the sleds you couldn't turn. You had to be on top of that.
Right.
As far as knowing what the sled's going to do. Some of them pulled like just harder than hell to get started,
Yes.
and some of them you
Yes.
just slide out. It just
Right. You can almost pick the front up and get a run at
yeah.
it. And I've noticed that. That was one thing I learned this year is I had one in particular, the box would hit and recoil and everybody else like, I don't have a problem with it. Well, I think I was coming out aggressive and I just had to be really smooth with that one. So you learn that with
you
sleds.
get used to sleds, what they do.
Yeah.
Of course, now Vaughn does most of the
He does build a
national
lot of them.
stuff. And if it isn't a sled that he's operating, it's one that he built.
Right.
Of course, that's another thing. Your operators have a lot to do
They do.
with the sleds too.
They do.
You've got to know who's running the sled this particular night.
Did you run into sled operators working against you at any point?
There was a couple of them that I had suspicions about. One I know for sure, but another one that I had suspicions about. But a lot of times, even then, I'd win on those sleds.
Right.
But there's some times that when I didn't win, that I thought something might be amiss.
Right.
But
I know recently in the last year or two, one guy got caught with the wheels dragging off the line. It's.
But you'll have that. That's just human nature.
That happens. It's just interesting. I didn't know. I've heard some stories way back where that was more prevalent. I think today it's hopefully a little more. They let the tractors do their thing. But just like anything, anybody's going to try to do an advantage and do what they can where they can.
Well, there was one thing in my career. I tried to never piss off an official.
Right.
I always tried to be nice to the officials because
Right.
they're calling the game, and then the sled guys are the other people that I was always
Right.
friendly with because I didn't want to cross them either.
Right.
It's-
Well, the sled guys are putting in a long night.
Yeah.
You know, we can go in, do our thing, hook, and
Yeah.
go back and load up and come back and be a spectator or whatever
Yeah.
we want. Those guys got a long night.
Yeah.
The officials, bless them.
Yeah.
I don't want that job.
I did that for a couple of years.
Yeah.
I know.
And
yeah.
so it's a long night too,
Yeah.
or a long day.
Yeah.
And so those are some things when you look at those. And then the other thing I always look back, like you had already mentioned, is the fans and the people that are there because they enjoy being there, but they maybe don't have the resources to really be competing at the very top.
Yeah.
I respect the heck out of those guys for coming and doing that. If you had an outdoor pool that you were not going to miss, what was your favorite outdoor pool?
That's a tough one. Of course, I like Bowling Green just because of the atmosphere and how big it was, but probably, I don't know whether you've ever heard of or anybody's ever talked about Inwood, Ontario.
No, they haven't.
Inwood was probably one of my favorite pools.
Really?
It was out it was kind of a natural amphitheater. It was like in a valley, and there was a hillside, and people would sit on the hillside, but the track was always just super, super tough track where, you know, it took power to win, and those were the kind of tracks that I liked where, you know, I didn't have to overthink it. You know, I could just let the power do its thing,
Right.
you know. Inwood, there's some other pools that I liked them all.
Right.
You know, it just
Right. If you went to indoors, and I know we've lost a lot of indoor pools. I think down in Houston they had one in the past.
That's one of the places I never pulled was
didn't.
Houston. I never pulled there. Dash to
I think
yeah.
even up in northern Iowa at the Unidome they pulled. I know Indy Super Pool was a big one. Sad to see it.
Of course, I pulled Super Pool. That was probably one of my favorite winter pools, although the track was pretty short. I don't like short tracks.
Right.
Louisville's okay. You're like a bunch of cattle down there. They herd you around. I liked it though. Well, I pulled an indoor pool in Toronto, I think. It was okay. Silverdome. Pulled there. That was pretty cool.
Was it?
Pulling in the winter in the Silverdome, yeah.
And it's sad to see those go away. Again, it comes back to money.
Yeah.
And it costs a lot to rent those facilities out and put one on.
I never liked pulling indoors where we had a smoke machine, you know. It just, of course, you got to have that, but it just, to me, the smoke machine is just kind of a pain in the ass, you know.
So you actually had indoor pools without a smoke tube?
I don't know that I went to Louisville and watched them pull without a smoke tube, but I don't believe I ever participated in a pool that didn't have a smoke machine.
I don't know that you could anymore. There's too much smoke.
I'm trying to think of Toronto, whether we had a smoke machine up there or not. Of course, that was in the mid-'70s, so I can't remember.
Right.
But,
interesting. You really said you didn't have any regrets. What's one of your favorite memories out of the whole thing? And it can be a general memory over time, too. It doesn't need to just be one event.
Well, I think a lot of pullers that pull for a good time will tell you it's not quite this way now, but the camaraderie between the pullers and the friends I made and just the connections I made, that's the most enjoyable for me. And then the other thing was the technology. And that's probably when I quit, that's what I missed the most is when something new would come out and I'd bolt it on, you know, and see if it worked or not, you know. And I would ask anybody that pulled with me. I was a lot of times always the last one to pull into a pool, and it's usually because I was still putting my motor together in the morning, and before I left or I'd been up all night putting it together, I was always procrastinated about everything, so I was always late, it seemed like.
And you didn't really have a crew of guys that went with you consistently?
No, I didn't even want anybody to go with me.
You went alone
a lot of the time. I went alone. I was married at the time, and my wife would go sometimes with me, but a lot of times I just by myself.
I remember that.
If I took you with me, I was there's probably 6 or 7 people I took with me, but I would tell you, I'm not here to entertain you. Once we get to the pool, you're on your own. I don't want to see you. I don't want to mess with you. if I ask you to do something, do it. But I'm focused on one thing here, and that's pulling.
Right.
Don't bother me.
Well, tire pressure and some of that you didn't change as much as what we do now, probably. Did you mess with that a lot?
I was very meticulous about checking my tire pressure and having my tires right, but I didn't. I figured out early on what the tire pressure I needed, and that's what I ran all the time. But there were some tracks, if the soft track was softer, I would let my tires down a little bit,
Okay.
you know.
All right. Because we end up, and I know you guys threw a lot of weights back then.
Yeah.
So I know guys sometimes would have somebody go with them to help throw weights.
No, not me.
I've usually got my son and at least one other person there.
Yeah.
And just, we have our job of things to do. Because again, I tell everybody that too. If you're a spectator or you're just riding, which I don't like to take anybody riding either, but stay out of the way.
Yeah.
Don't want to be tripping over you, backing into you.
Yeah.
It's
yeah, I mean, we, like, in my heyday, I put 3,000 pounds on a tractor, and I could do it in about 5 or 10 minutes, you know.
Do it yourself.
I had a system, and I could get it loaded pretty quick.
Interesting. Very interesting. When you sold the tractor, I want to jump into that a little bit. When you sold the tractor, you worked with it for another 16 years.
Yeah.
And in that period of time, you probably seen the double cuts come in, the roll cages.
Yeah.
Did telemetry get put on?
Yeah.
Okay. And were they going to a dry block by then? Was your motor?
No, I never.
It still ran your motor?
Yep. Still basically the same motor. I mean, we had better blocks and heads and stuff, but they were still wet, you know.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. And I mean, the tractor's now, you know where it's at or where the pieces are, I guess.
Well, I know where the pieces are. Yeah.
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 And it got parted out.
Yeah.
So.
Yep. That's probably a good thing, though. Everybody asked me where it is, and I said, it's in pieces.
Right.
You know.
And, you know, that's happened to different tractors. There's a lot of them that has happened to. I think there's only maybe one person I've interviewed that we've found that I know the tractor's still running.
I thought seriously about when I told Kevin the tractor needed to go, Kevin Comross. When I told him it needed to go, I'm the one that brokered the deal and got it sold. But I thought about dropping it down to a Light Pro. And, of course, now Light Pros need to have a different chassis. And I think they're going to do that shortly here.
Yeah.
But I thought that single charger, you know, having rather than a component frame, having a regular, regular tractor, I thought that would have fit that tractor very well. And the sheet metal was nice, roll cage was nice, everything was nice, hitch, all that stuff was very functional, but it just wasn't going to have enough power anymore. But kind of my big sticking point was, like I told you, I always had a Sigma pump, and they don't allow Sigma pumps, and that just kind of broke my heart that, you know, we weren't going to be able to do that. So.
Some of those other pumps, though, that we're running, it's pretty amazing.
Oh, yeah, I know.
I would guess some of these pumps we have today are cranking out the volume that early Sigma was. I mean, I'm sure the new ones are amazing, but...
But, you know, back when I was pulling, there were 2 Sigmas, too. And now I think they're even bigger. But I had the small Sigma, and I never could make the big Sigma work with my 414, and I never had my Sigma open clear up either.
Oh, really?
I know, never had. And even when I started working on his tractor, he had the big pump, and we never had it clear open either.
You don't know was that an 18 millimeter?
No, I don't. I think it was 16 maybe.
Maybe
mine was a 14 millimeter. I know that. Mine had Hyperstar number in the pumps later on, and since mine was the first one, it had double aught. That was my number, was double aught. But is that what the Sigmas are running now? 18 millimeter?
I think so. I got to be careful what I say.
I know the P pumps; they're pretty big.
Yeah, and it depends on the class if you can even run a Sigma. You know, is the thing. Like I'm not allowed to.
Yeah.
I misspoke about the CCs. I said I had a 14, and then I really have a 13. And
Uh-huh.
I was new when I shot my first one. I was talking to Warren Ropp, and boy, did I catch heck on that. They came and teched me and all kinds of, to find out. And I just misspoke. I was a rookie at it. But yeah, it varies on the class and what they can do. So it's been a lot of, I will say this, I would still say it's a very good group of pullers out there, and they're friendly. I was involved in derby cars, motorcycle racing, car racing. I have never seen a fist thrown at a tractor pull. I've seen a lot of the opposite. You maybe have over the years where there's a few guys got into it.
Not so much, it's not.
And I would say they're still very helpful. I mean, when I popped a turbo last winter at an indoor pull, I had a guy from Western Iowa I'd never met before walk up and offer me a turbo he had in his trailer, and I'm like, I just beat you, and now you're coming back and offering me a part.
Oh yeah,
that doesn't happen in other motorsports like that. Right. So, frankly, that's what drew me back to tractor pulling.
Towards the end of my pulling career, before I sold the tractor, a lot of the good pullers, were starting to quit, and that kind of took the wind out of my sails too. I mentioned John Lancaster as one of the people I aimed for when I went to a pull to beat. He quit, Brett Berg quit, John Klug was gone. And it kind of like, what am I doing this for? But there was a group of us that, if we had a two-night pull, that first night we would get together and we'd actually drink pretty hard and party pretty hard. It was, it's Rob Russell, Esden Lane, Warren Ropp, and myself, and several other pullers that kind of in our little clique
had a lot of fun.
We had a lot of fun.
And you kind of were at the change of the guard at that point. Probably where that generation was moving on, and the next ones were coming in. And were you were one of the younger ones maybe in that group?
Well, I was young to start with, of course, but by the time I quit, everybody was at least 6 or 10 years younger than me, and I was the old man at 40. And there was Brett and Rob and Esden. Of course, Esden just, I think, 6 years younger than I am, but they were all younger. They called them the young guns, and I was the old guy, even at 40,
Right.
So, yeah.
That's interesting.
But that was another thing I found out early on when I first started, and when I said I won my first championship in 75, I was pulling against old guys then. And those guys had been together, same group of people, and they partied pretty hard. And I figured out early on I can't be partying and winning pulls the next day. So I didn't. But then toward the end of my career, I got into that mode too, where let's celebrate a little bit. And
let's have some fun.
It was fun.
Yeah, that's interesting. We kind of do the same thing. We don't try to keep the partying down. Just if there's a pull going on,
well,
we keep it focused.
If you want to win, that's probably best.
Yeah,
focus on what you're doing.
So 74, was that your first year with the 1066?
Yes.
And so the second year you win championship out of the gate, you win 10 over your career. The last year you pulled, you came in second in points? Is that what you were telling me?
I think I actually ended up in third. I was leading up until the last 5 or 6 pulls, and I think even the last pull, there was a chance I could still win the deal, and I did terrible.
Okay. But you were switching to double cut tires, and a lot of things were going on.
I was fighting those tires.
Yeah.
And I changed them 3/4 of the way or 2/3 of the way through the season.
Should have maybe finished the year.
I should have just stayed with what I had, and I probably would have been all right.
Yeah.
But I was always looking for the edge, and
you had a very storied career.
Well, thank you.
For sure. I mean, it was there's nobody I've run into that. There's a few people they all know, and of course one is Jerry Legade. Bob Parks is one with tires. I don't know if he ever worked on yours or not.
I ran, the double cuts that I run at the end were his tires.
And then your name comes up a lot. John Klug's another one. Of course, Rops. Ernie was pretty involved in the NTPA, and I think sat on the board at one time as well.
Yes.
I'm going to
Yes, you
miss a
did.
couple of names, I'm sure, but there's a handful or so of you guys that always come up in
Yeah.
that circuit.
Yeah.
It just seems like you guys were there before NTPA really was formed, or as it was.
Yeah, as it was,
and
yeah.
came through it, and
Yeah.
were the founding fathers, so to speak.
John Klug was one of the founding fathers,
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure. But
Yeah.
I was just kind of, I was young. I was just kind of there.
Yeah.
I would have been 20 when NTPA started.
So you
I
were
was-
just starting as a flag
Yeah.
person. So you mentioned Ed Hart. Unfortunately, I was supposed to interview him a few days ago, but he's had just a little bit of a health condition that delayed it. And we're still going to get that interview in. But
he would be a good one to
he's a
interview.
historian, and he has sent me pictures of the house where the first meeting was held and some things like that. So he was very instrumental in unifying the NTPA as a sport. If you'd give any advice to young pullers getting into this thing, what advice would you give them?
Boy, that's pretty much just stick with it and be prepared. I mean, that was, I always, everybody always asked me, why was I so successful? And I never really have an answer for that. With Joe Bush, we were together with Joe Bush and Tom Gillis, and Tom asked me that question, and Joe Bush, I said, I don't really know, Tom, and Joe Bush said he was always prepared. And that's kind of, as I think about it, I was always prepared, and that's, preparation is what it's all about,
Yeah.
And that's what I would give. And I would tell them, hey, you can beat anybody if you try hard enough. I mean, I beat everybody, and everybody beat me at least once,
Oh, right.
People would come up to me and say, I'm going to build a tractor and beat you. And I said, come on.
Right.
I said, you won't be the first one that's beat me.
Right. You're going to get beat. I think there's something to be said to have a lot of horsepower. There's no doubt about that. But there's also a lot said to be prepared, have the setup.
Yeah.
Regardless of horsepower, you do things right, you're going to sneak in a win. here and there.
I was very fortunate. I got in with Jerry Lagat, and I pretty much had sufficient power. But there were years when I struggled, but I still won pulls because I paid attention to what my tractor and what was going on. You know.
I don't think I asked you this. If you do it over, I did ask you maybe
I'd do anything different.
But if you do it all over, would you stayed in it longer?
I really don't know. I kind of pulled year to year. I never really knew when my end was going to be. I never thought that far ahead or planned. I always thought when I started the year, it might be my last year.
Okay.
It just kind of depended. I know, especially early on, I couldn't see myself pulling more than 2 or 3 years and be out. But
really?
I kind of stayed with it, yeah.
So you enjoyed it, but you weren't going to lose money doing it?
No. I couldn't. I just,
wow.
You
were very different than most tractor pullers.
I just couldn't. But now, when I was pulling, when I was in it, I was spending money I didn't have and shouldn't have been spending on it.
But then you had to go perform to earn it back.
But I felt like I could win it back. So
right.
I was not, anything new or anything cost money. That even if I didn't have the money, that didn't bother me. But another thing I never mentioned to you, there were pullers that were always worried about breaking their stuff, their equipment. I never worried about that, never. And I figured out early on, if you're worried about that, you aren't going to drive it like you stole it.
Right.
And if you want to win, you better not be worried about that because you're easy to beat.
Right.
And I always went with the notion, if I tear it up, I'll put it back together.
Right.
Somehow.
Right.
But like I said, I didn't have any money.
Yeah.
And it was fun.
Right.
I mean, it was terribly fun,
Well,
and I think that's what kept me going.
But there's an adrenaline that goes with that. Because you had more than just winning.
Yeah.
You had a lot of other things in the balance.
Yeah.
Because you needed to pay some bills.
Yeah.
And there was a lot more that drove that adrenaline.
It was like playing poker. I mean, you were bluffing all the time. I didn't have the money to back up my mouth. That was for sure.
Yeah. I've seen this in sports. I've seen this in tractor pulling, car racing, you name it. Certain people do certain things, and you can tell when they're defeated in their head.
Yeah.
And I can tell you that's one thing that if people in life in general, the reason you've done well in life is because of how you think and how you focus on things.
I suppose.
It makes a difference. And once you give up, it's game over.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter. And I'll just share this real quick to add to that. I had a banker I was visiting with that got into banking in the early 80s. And he was kind of the hatchet man for that little bank. And I said, what was your debt to income ratio and how'd you know when to roll them up? And he said, we just go out and visit them. And he said, you could look in their eyes and tell when they're done. He said, some guys couldn't handle the stress of any debt and they sold out, went to town, bought a house, a car, and a washing machine, and he said, the next guy, we were scared to go see him.
Yeah.
He was going to fight, and he said some of our biggest farmers are the ones who fought the hardest back then, because when it come out, they owned the acres and were farming the acres.
In the 80s, my banker told me I needed to quit.
Yeah.
And I said, I'm not a quitter. And within 2 years, I had all my debt paid off. And, and
that's just a testament to your performance on the tractor pulling track as well. So, well, Danny, I want to thank you so much. I don't know if there's anything else you want to share.
Probably not. You got to ask me questions for me to share. But I appreciate too. We're talking about history here, and
yes,
a lot of people don't know, and they need to know that.
I appreciate you letting me do this. I know how inconvenient it is, and one thing we get asked to do quite a bit that I've not done, and that is start to do some roundtables and get some of you guys together in a room, and we're going to start working on that. So you'll probably hear from me again on that.
That'd be good. I mean,
because then we start getting into the stories of, well, you remember this time here and that, and so we're working on putting some of those together. And of course, when this drops, it'll be live on a Sunday night at 7:00. People can watch it on YouTube. It'll be out on iTunes and Spotify after that. We will put it out on our social media channels too, so that people know when it's coming out, and I'll let you know. But thank you.
You're welcome.
You've been a hero of mine since I've been a young boy.
You're too kind. Thank you.
I appreciate it. So thank you again for watching this episode of Breaking Barriers.
Breaking Barriers.